Hey there, rulers. Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to the Teacher's Lounge, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast, now from our new studio here. As always, featuring myself, Jeremy Franklin, TMO73, and I am joined by the lovely Brandon Bremont, the spectacular Ryan Miles,
Hey, I was like, are we all lovely? What am I? Okay, cool.
and the goofy Mike Rance.
Hey, whoa, hey. Unbelievable.
I didn't even
debate me. Debate me.
I didn't even realize you were going like whoa, 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 whoa. I thought you were doing like the Zoidberg, whoa, 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 and it was like, yeah, that's goofy. That's on brand.
Checked out.
That's on brand. Here we go. As always, super happy to have you all here with us. We're super grateful. Again, we're testing some stuff out with terms of new audio. So if you give me remember, if you're in the chat, if you can let me know if the volume sounds good, it's always super appreciative. Also, want to give a thanks to tonight's sponsor. Don't worry, it's not one of the janky ones that got to all the YouTubers. We are sponsored tonight. There's none of that. We're sponsored tonight by CCG Prime. It is a ccgprime.com. It is a new online singles seller who has gotten into the game here with AO4. You can go to ccgprime.com. There is also a link down below in the description. You go check them out. They even have stuff for AO3. A lot of stock for AO3 singles if you're looking to make your stuff shiny or just miss out on stuff for your pulls. And they'll be having singles for other stuff moving forward. So huge thanks to them for sponsoring us for tonight. And go ahead and check them out. So tonight we're going to be talking about we're now post-release weekend, so people can really kind of start actually getting into testing. So the idea of how your opinions of cards when you're just looking at the spoilers and haven't gotten a chance to actually sit down and play the cards can change for when you actually start putting things through the gambit and trying out new ideas and everything else. And so why, like how that process works, how it can change, and how you can use it to your advantage, and why being active in discussion at every point of that stage is super important. And to kind of kick us off, I'm going to kick it over to Brandon. So Brandon, why don't you kind of give us a rundown of your thoughts here?
Yeah, so the precipice for this thought was this was now a couple weeks back because they had the 73rd anniversary and stuff. But the last time I was on with Josh Patton, we were talking about the new altar decks that were going on, and he made a comment about how when altar first came out, when it was first spoiled, how I came on here and I said that I didn't think the card was very good, and that is true. That did actually happen, which kind of looks ridiculous in hindsight, given that it's like one of the best cards in the format right now. But I wanted to come on and talk about how it is important that you come out and you can create these opinions of cards when the spoilers happen, and that you can also be willing to change those opinions like as you begin to test, as the format develops, and as decks evolve to beat each other. Alter, not the best example of the latter things. I think that card was just good. I was just incorrect about that. But we are going to be incorrect about them some percentage of the time, which is part of the conceit of wanting to come out and make that kind of content at the beginning. I made a post on the US page probably just a couple weeks back now, maybe much longer than that, when Ghost in the Shell came out, saying that I thought only 2 cards were playable in the entire set. And I wanted to come out and say that because it's important to try and generate that kind of discussion so people can talk between themselves, say, I agree with that assessment, I disagree with that assessment, here's what I think. And that kind of communication can create a lot of the value of having a Force of Will community. That, at least for me, the stuff that I like is that kind of generated discussion. And now after testing and all of that good stuff, I found that one of the cards that I said I thought was playable, I said that the Unsummoned for 1 colorless and Machiko the Major might be playable. Now I don't think Machiko the Major, or the Unsummoned, I don't think the Unsummoned is very good. I still think the Machiko is very good, but I do think there is an Aramaki deck that plays a lot of these cards that is kind of good. So like that has changed, that has evolved with playing, with getting to see how the formats come together. And I think that's very cool, and I think that's something that we can all agree is a fun part of the learning process of this game.
Yeah, for sure. I think that without having those kinds of conversations, I think it's very easy to almost kind of pigeonhole yourself in what you're even going to be focusing on in regards to testing, which I think is wrong, right? When a whole new set comes out, you need to be I think there's a difference between like looking at every card and making it an immediate decision, a judgment on how good or bad that card is, and just like writing them off as to like, oh, we only need to be looking at this, as opposed to having those conversations and truly looking at every card. Now, in every card game, and we can all contest to this, there's going to be a card in the set that you look at and you say, this is absolutely unplayable, regardless of if I test or not. It's probably chaff. There's going to be some of that in every set. Cough, cough, the reprints of Reading the Girl with Nothing. But outside of that, if you were to walk in and look at AO3 and say, oh, clearly these are the best cards, everything else is garbage, this is 100% what I'm going to be focusing on my testing, and you're not willing to have that conversation or put that opinion out there to see if there's cross feedback, then like your testing is going to be naturally biased and you're not going to be seeing everything. So, it's that kind of follow-up, how having that conversation makes sure that you're actually checking all the boxes.
Right. And I think that especially among Force Field players, like the kind of community that likes card games tends to be a little bit full of themselves. Like people don't like to admit they're wrong. I mean, and this is me. This is very much me. Like I am very steadfast in the things that I say, and I think that gives people this incentive to kind of dig their heels in when they make a comment about how good a card is, and that can hurt your testing, and that can really hurt you when you want to say like, I think this is good, and I will continue to play as if it is good, even if all of my external evidence seems to say against it. And so I think one of the growing points for me, like even during the time I played Force of Will, was learning to be like, just because I went out and I made a post that says I think a card is good does not mean I'm going to continue to think that card's good. I used to do that to myself. It used to hurt me, and I think it's important that we all grow out of that. That we all try to really take objective data instead of biasing ourselves, really hurting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen. Go ahead, Ryan.
I remember one example of like when like the community as a whole has really been incorrect about something, and also like, yes, there's parts of just assessing a card and then just being incorrect about it and testing, but also like people really write off cards early on in spoiler seasons, and then like as more spoilers come out, like you can reassess based on just like what the full picture looks like, right? Like I think that like certain card, like I kind of wrote off Arla when the spoiler started, because I'm just like, okay, you're going to be removing strangers from your game, but your Regalia and what you do is just nowhere near as efficient as what the other Regalia rulers we already have are doing. But like once we started seeing more of the cards and some of the broken one drops that came out, it's like very easy for me to say, okay, now that I have more information, I can just rewrite my opinion and say, I think this might be even better than like what some of the other Regalia cards are doing, for sure.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you have a thought on this?
A little bit of the same, because I've been, paying decent amounts of attention to the spoiler season. I've been more in Eternal formats recently, just because I don't have any events that I can go to for New Frontiers for the time being. But looking at the spoilers, I've seen a lot of people talking about how, Rizard is certainly on everybody's mind because Griffin got reprinted. Mikage Rey is just like an insane card. It just seems like there's a lot of tools that should be good, but it's very strange to see it juxtaposed to things that have already been really good, especially out of DBV. Like, DBV is probably one of the most insane sets we've ever seen, and every time a new set comes out with like, oh, this card's crazy, it's like, yeah, but does it stand up to like the 10 cards from DBV that were just nuts?
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely we're seeing that, people are experimenting with them, and obviously people are going to want to try new things, which is great. But you also tend to see people looking into cards that are like, DBV can go well into Rizard. Say somebody's like, oh, black-green, I can put Athenia in here. And it's like, sure, try Athenia in there. See what it does. That's fine. That's what the experimentation phase is for. And I think that's been really good for at least people figuring things out. And I think there's a lot of things that people just haven't really scratched on the surface of. I think that Brendan mentioned Aramaki before, and I think that Aramaki, while being, the starter deck ruler, the void ruler, like, you don't have any cool, like, Regalia synergies. It's like, sure, but he's got his own little kind of nuances that you can do with him. He's not just a throwaway ruler like everybody thought he was. So,
yeah, there's also this part of it that, like, the tail end of it, or like I've watched Ryan do this and I've watched Brandon do this. I haven't ever been with Mike the night before a GP, so I don't know if this is the same case for Mike. But like, like this discussion of what we're having of like this idea of like getting locked or writing something off in your testing and not really maybe doing the work that you need to do on it, or having your opinion suddenly pivot. I think is kind of what we have seen. If you really do bring that into your testing, you get a lot more success, and you're more willing to pivot and make the proper meta calls. I think, because I think if you dig your heels in, then you don't see things like what we saw from Brandon out of Vegas. Because like the night before Vegas, Brandon was telling me, absolutely, build me this Machina deck. It is 100% the deck to beat. It is 100% the deck that's going to win me this event. And like if Brandon had held fast to that, he would not have rushed to try to build an Adam deck the night/morning of a Vegas GP, and might not have top 8'd because Machina did not necessarily do as well at that tournament as we thought. And so that willingness to be able to pivot, change your opinion, look at cards in a different way, re-look at cards, I think gives you even almost kind of more of a natural ability to be able to make those meta calls appropriately. Similarly to Worlds, right? Worlds this past year, we were playing at the house prior to Worlds, and everyone had pretty much decided exactly what they were going to be playing, bringing into it. And there was a lot of like heel digging, I think, from a lot of different players, and a lot of the debates were a lot of stone walls of like, no, you're wrong, and here's why. But I think then we kind of saw, I think Ryan kind of championed it, of saying like, look, guys, we need to like actually do this and like actually try some stuff off and reconsider some things. And the guys sat down, and ultimately they decided not to pivot. But I think the deck that Ryan was thinking about playing at Worlds and the deck that he ended up playing at Worlds look different. Looked a lot different. Yeah, they looked a lot different. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of that. Okay, wait a minute. Let's reevaluate this card. Is this card good? I wrote it off before. Is it worth it now? I thought it was hot shit before. Is it actually that now? And being willing to reevaluate your opinions and say, oh, maybe I'm not the smartest man in the room about what card needs to go where, gave him, that pivot to be able to eventually win Worlds, right? And so there's a part of it that, and we've seen it from other players as well. I mean, I have been the victim of not doing that, on the reverse of Jack Giant Prisia meta. Right,
that was a wild card.
That was well, no, but like I knew about that deck with like spinning myth Regalia decks. I was so thoroughly convinced that if you were playing Regalia and you wanted to be an answer to Prisia, that like the way to go was to play spinning myths with Regalia as Val 2. Like I dug my heels in on that. Even though one of my own teammates when I was playing on Team Ogre at the time was like, Jeremy, you need to pivot. Like, you need to pivot to being the problem more than you need to pivot to being the solution. If you put this spinning myth package in Prisia, it is going to pay off much better and much more consistently. And I was like, I don't really have the experience on it. I don't feel comfortable with that. What if I just get hosed out by Prisia? Like, I was unwilling to pivot on my own opinion on what was best for that meta. And I got clapped. Like, I absolutely got clapped. But had I pivoted, I probably would have been the one clapping, right? Just because, I mean, I remember talking to Aaron, I remember talking to you, Ryan, about hearing the results of Jeremiah playing against Brandon that same weekend in California. And I think the consensus we all had the next morning at breakfast was like, Spinning Miss Prisia is just the better version of the two. And in the matchup between Jack Giant versus Spinning Miss Prisia will win like 80% of the time. So had I not dug my heels in, had I done that testing, had I been willing to question my own opinion on things and done the pivot, I would have probably been a lot more successful. And so I think that you can do that in all of your testing. Like, don't ever assume that your information or your thoughts about what every card's value is the be-all, end-all, because it's not. It's just not going to be that.
I think when I'm like forming opinions out the gate on a set, just like the way that I structure my own testing is I'll very easily write off cards in terms of like, okay, I'm going to build a deck from scratch using the new cards. I know that these 80% of cards will not be in my initial list at all because I think they're garbage. But like the more I play in that format, and this is more to what Brandon's point was originally, is like once you start playing and you're able to see what your average turn 1 looks like in this matchup, your average turn 2 looks like in this matchup, your average turn 3, that helps you better understand like what cards can actually slot in there. The example you were saying from Worlds, I have written off Karura every single phase of my life. When that card was spoiled, I was like, that card costs 5. When that card, like, I've played that card so many goddamn times, and I'm always just like, this card's terrible. And then I'll play some games. I'll be playing some quick cast green deck. I'll look at my turn 5. I'll say go. My opponent won't do anything because they're afraid of counter spells, and I'm like, God damn it, is Carrera good again? Like, how did this happen? It's happened. I've played the card in like 3 different decks because Scheherazade was like a meta, or not, it was actually Scheherazade, but it was a Chimimi, sorry. Like the Chimimi Hanzo bullshit. Like, the card just keeps popping up. And like, when I write off cards originally, like, I will like not put them in my initial deck lists, but I guarantee you, after I've played a handful of games and I've gone through the turns, the actual sequences of what everything looks like, I will go through the entire New Frontiers database in my colors and say, all right, what card is going to solve the problem that I perceive that I'm having for this situation or this situation? And sometimes, like, you just find something that you never would have expected before.
Yep, I've weirdly enough, I think it was a quote by Markiplier, but it doesn't really matter who it comes from. But he said, like, never be afraid to be the stupidest person in the room, because then you always have something to learn. And I think that in regards to card games, when you're doing testing, when you're like forming opinions of cards and everything else, like, never be afraid to, like, almost kind of like Brandon said, like, put your opinion out there, and like, but be willing to adjust, because like,
and I think that other side is.
Well,
goodbye, Brandon.
Bye, Brandon.
Oh no.
He'll be back.
What about? Here we go. Time to talk. Oh man.
Well, my opinion is.
Oh yeah. Oh, there he goes. He's back.
He's back.
Round 2. Nothing.
Maybe he'll be back eventually.
Yeah, I mean, certain cards and certain strategies are better for slower or faster formats. And when you perceive a format as like faster than it is, it'll be very easy to write off certain cards. And then as you play, you'll be like, okay, everyone's playing anti-fast stuff because of how fast the format is. And then that causes the format to slow down, and suddenly slow stuff is good again. But Brandon has something important to tell us all.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I was saying the other side of that is, like, we could always be right about our opinions if we never said anything at all. And I think that makes for a worse community, or a worse world in general. So I appreciate it when people go out there and they say what they think is going to be good initially. I like it when people make posts about, like, this is what I think the best cards in the format are. And then even if that's wrong, I still don't think that they made any kind of mistake, because they put themselves out there. So I think that it is always encouraged to start those conversations, because those conversations are how we get to the end state.
Yep. It's the idea. It's that, it's that idea of solving the meta, right? And you have to have a million ideas to have one good one. So if we don't have those million ideas, well, eventually we won't see the thing that we were missing. We won't see the solution.
Is this the part where we pour one out for the players in Forceful that are banned? Because they were some of the most antagonistic, opinionated players we had. And as much as like they definitely messed up and don't deserve to be here, like, those conversations, like right now, I think we just kind of beef with the Europeans, which is also fun in its own right. Just like having different opinions and discussing like whether or not a card is good and why it's good, and like what a perceived like version of the solved format actually is just like why I love card games. That
absolutely
happens, like, is just so
100%. That's so why when I made that post about only thinking 2 cards in Custody in the Shell were good, I made that post and I made it as hyperbolic as possible for the sake of trying to generate conversation, and it was successful in that. And so I always hope that that's what comes of it.
And then everybody's like, wait, Aramaki and Toku says, great. And here are my reasons why. And it's like, cool, give us your reasons. We want to hear it.
Yeah, and I think that's always been kind of something that we've, in the Forcible community, I've experienced. We've talked about this before, more than I have in other card games. You're right, Ryan, in the fact that some of our most antagonistic opinion sharers are gone, and are gone for good reason. But like, in general, the Forcible community has never necessarily been hidden about what they're playing or what they're talking about. It's always kind of been an open book out there, and so which almost kind of like makes it easier for people to share those opinions, because it's not like we're a community where it's like, you're an idiot for thinking that. It's just
you're an idiot.
Yeah, like
the big thing is
we don't do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, if you compare like the Forcible community to, say, like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh, like one of the big 3 of card games, it's like people aren't super vocal about things all the time, just because there's no everybody's already playtesting. There's like a huge player base of people always testing out new things, always trying new combinations of things. Forceful doesn't have that, huge epicenter of people playing. So it's like, if somebody finds something new, the first thing to think of is let's share this with the community, see what they think, and then from there, people will formulate new opinions based on what they perceive that person said, and then once that person's like, no, you're wrong, this is what's better, and this is what's better, and you just get that like push and pull when with like such a small community, which is great. It's like open communication where people are able to test anecdotally compared to actual testing the way that games with bigger player bases have.
Yep, I think it's just important that when you're sharing those opinions, you always have to be mindful of, like, we've had experiences with some players in the span of Forceful's history who have engaged in the conversation, but they start the conversation and are unwilling to consider the fact that they might get challenged. There have been moments where that's occurred, and I think that it's important, as you're trying to grow competitively, as you're trying to improve those skills, which I think is what Teachers Lounge is all about. That's why we started this podcast. So I would be amiss to not mention it, is that, like, if you're going to put your opinion out there, again, you have to be willing to get counter evidence or counterpoints to consider and think about. It could be that those counterpoints are absolutely wrong in the long run, right? But, like, you have to, you can't assume that those counterpoints are wrong when you've been provided them. We've had this, players in the past who will, there's like two like argument trains that I think are like pretty just not good, which is, well, it's been doing well for me so far. Like that's an argument. Or well, that's not an issue for me because X. Like, we've had, that's a big thing before.
Heard that a lot.
Well, that's not an issue for me because X.
As a third point, like, oh, but it won this event or whatever is also not an argument, because like as soon as something wins an event, like now it actually gets put to the test. Like it has to do well at the next event to really have any merit whatsoever, honestly. Like I've seen this is true for like rogue decks that like randomly spike a top 8, they're off the radar, and everyone's like, oh my god, this deck is so good, and it's like, well, see if it can spike now that it's on the radar. And also when a deck even sweeps a top 8, like that can still be a deck that is targetable now that its existence is known.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. I think the thing is, it's not.
I call this the Pristia phenomenon.
It's one of those things where it's like, don't. It's important to put yourself out there. It's important to share your thoughts. It's important to be receptive to the feedback and like engaging in the conversation so that you don't trap yourself in this like confirmation bias, which is just bad for testing in general. But also, like, you have to not fall into the pitfalls of trying to answer the challenges, because it's not really challenges. It's just discourse, right? I think in general, like if we're having a discussion and Ryan, like for example, if Ryan and I were having a debate about, I don't know, Sandstorm and Light of the Moon in Kaguya decks as to whether or not it's better or not. Like at the end of the conversation, Ryan and I could be completely in disagreement about what, but we've both made our points known and can now both think about it. And it's like, it's not about trying to convince Ryan that he's wrong. It's not about Ryan trying to convince me that I'm wrong. The best discussion, the best growth comes from the fact that we're having the discussion and then can just think about the things that are said. And so I think that
absolutely. And in fact, one of the things I respect about Ryan most is his ability to, to make those pivots. Like, we were talking about this earlier, how I think that Sandstorm is the rune you should play over Light of the Moon. And Ryan was convinced that Light of the Moon was the only choice. And we had this discussion, and I was able to convince him that Sandstorm was the correct one to play. And then so.
Yeah, Brandon made this really good argument, because I was thinking, Light of the Moon has some niche application where my opponent might misplay and not play around me having Light of the Moon. But then I realized that I have to assume my opponent is a good player, right? So I can't just, once I play Explorer of the Unknown, they should know I have Light of the Moon. So what Brandon told me was that there is a non-zero number of people playing Percivals in the format, and they will play it on turn 1, so Sandstorm is probably better there. And he convinced me that Sandstorm is just the better rune if you're playing a Kaguya deck.
Oh my gosh, I love you both.
And then Jeremy entered in the conversation talking about Sprout, Sapling of the World Tree, And
I did mention that.
That factored in the part where Sandstorm can hit that on turn 1 if that happens.
I did remember. I did bring that in.
Oh, and Acolyte of the Sun is not an unplayable card. Like,
yeah, there's enough. There's like.
Thanks everybody. That'll be it for us tonight. I've been joined as always by Ryan Miles with Brandon Bremont's face. Brandon Bremont with Ryan Miles' face. But like, I think, like,
Franklin, I'm signing up.
Yeah, but like, all silliness aside, like these kinds of conversations and like being willing to challenge yourself and everything else, I think is the most important thing for people to be mindful of when a set first releases, especially now. Like, this is a lesson that you need to apply and start really making use of right now, because at the earliest, our next competitive event is a month away. So you now have a month to look at AO, which I think, for a long time is like the most time we've had from like set release to major event in like a long time.
Yeah,
like
2 set releases.
Yeah, we've had technically 2 set releases between like having a full month to test the meta. Like you need to start having these conversations with people, and like it's really nice to see. Like if you look at the Force of Will Global community, like the Force of Will Global page. There's a lot of, like, we're growing numbers by the day. Like, we're getting at least 3 to 4 new members a day. There's people coming back to the game. There's new people getting into the game. Like, you have this pool of knowledge to be able to, like, bounce ideas off of. And so, like, recognizing that you don't have the perfect opinion of everything right off the bat, there might be something you miss. And also just, like, being comfortable sharing your thoughts in a healthy environment that you know is not going to challenge you, like now's the time to take advantage of that. Like it is probably the number one thing that I would tell people to do is like post your deck list, but like don't just post your deck list. That's the one thing I see a lot of people doing is like, what do you think of this deck?
Suggestions?
Any suggestions about this deck? But it's like, okay, tell me about the game. Talk about the game. Like talk about why you think this card is good. Talk about specific cards about what you think. You know,
play this card because it looks cool.
Like share that piece, right? Because if someone tells me, it's one of the reasons why we don't do a lot of deck doctors here on the channel. It is a perk that you can get for one of the membership tiers, but like even when we do them, I've had people in the past who like just send me the deck list, and my immediate response to them is like, hey, tell me about the deck. Like, don't just show me a deck list, because then I don't know what your like opinions are, or what I'm gonna just say that's the same thing that you've already considered, or like we have to actually have a 2-sided conversation to be able to make it work. And the Facebook community right now is at a place where you can really do that. And so engaging in that conversation is super important. So Orion Hoover's asking when's the next event. Collinsville, June 27th. Collinsville, Illinois is at this point in time still scheduled to occur. And then the next one is in Dallas in the 3rd week of July. Dallas, Texas. And then August is... We don't know when Minneapolis is going to be scheduled for in August. We do know that Collinsville weekend is also Montreal weekend. So June 27th, I think, is Collinsville and Montreal, right? August 23rd is Toronto, Canada, and then at some point in time in August, it's going to be Minneapolis.
I'm wondering if Montreal, like I still need to figure out the logistics behind Montreal, because I know that is Canada's border still shut? Because
I don't know.
We got a month to figure that out.
I think if you're American anyway, it wasn't like close to Americans, it was close to like foreign travel. But to go back to like what Jeremy was saying about the deck doctors, I don't know if you can show this on screen. I just shared a meme, but there's like someone's like, oh, please help me with my budget. It's like food, $200, data, $150, rent, $800, candles, $4,000. And then someone who is good at the economy, please help me with my budget. My family is dying. And then like the meme continues where it's like, maybe spend less on candles. And he's just like, no, it doesn't have the after part.
Here we go.
Like, spend less on candles. He's like, no. Anytime I do a deck doctor, it feels like that, where it's like, here's this deck that I have, and I'm like, maybe cut this garbage card, and they're like, no. And it's like, if you tell me a little bit more about what your deck is going to do, and you're actually trying to facilitate that bad card, or like this kooky idea, like it doesn't have to be good, but like at least if that's what you're doing, I can
back it up, right?
Yeah, I wonder how many people post those deck lists not actually trying to get them fixed, but so that they can like have a public space to defend their bad opinions. Like I sometimes wondering if
people do that, right?
I think people love defending bad opinions.
I think people Because that's the difference between discourse and debate, right? So like discourse is not about winning, it's about just engaging in the conversation and learning. Debate is I want to beat you, right? And I think that we have a lot of people, regardless of whether it's posting about a deck list or sharing their opinion about a card or anything else, that like if your intention is to debate, then you're in it for a different, like you're obviously in it for a different reason, and the conversation is going to look a lot different. Don't fall into that trap. Like,
and if you're playing the card for the meme, if somebody asks you, "Hey, remove this card," if you're playing the card for the meme, you just go, "But think about the idiot scenario where it'll be great. Think about the cheating in the Athenia with the castling on the Greiber. Easy."
I'm still trying to break Alice's castling for this format. No success yet. But don't write it off. There was one other thing about with how far away the event actually is. Like, there is no deck that I could see not randomly winning this event, because I think that over the next month we will test these black, green, white, Sigurd, Kaguya, Athenia. That'll be like out the gate the best. We'll start maybe swapping one color for another to get like perfect Loki in there, or we'll want more discards, so it'll be more black based to beat Kaguya. I think we're gonna see a lot of evolutions of that deck type, and a lot of different things could happen. And it's totally possible. I know, Brandon, you posted a meme actually this week about everyone, main decking like 10 cards of Graveyard Hate, and then the Melgus deck just sitting there thinking, this is my time. Like, those aggro decks can get there. It's really going to be an absolute Wild West, because like there might be a best deck, but it will not be ready to beat what it doesn't know it needs to be.
I posted in the Discord the other day in the Rogue Skill Discord how I was saying I think that by power level alone, the Kaguya Athenia or Kaguya Alter deck is the best deck in format. But if the event was tomorrow, I wouldn't be playing that deck. Because I think that so many people know that's the best deck in format, and it's pretty easy to beat. I mean, like, really any amount of Graveyard Hate really makes that deck feel pretty bad. The deck is not super aggro proof. There's a lot of things that kind of go on top of it. And so I was going to play a worse deck that is good against that and good against the decks that are good against it. And so I was saying, I alluded to this 2 podcasts ago, but like if you were playing a deck last format and it did not get significantly better this format, it's probably bad now, because the power level of AO3 is very, very high, and it really shot the format pretty skyward.
Yeah, we definitely
on Dual Stones alone.
Yeah, we definitely saw that classic set 3 power spike.
Yeah, it was a big power spike. And so in my personal testing, we had this thing of like day 1, I was like, oh, this deck is broken, this is the best deck in the format. The next day I was playing a different deck and said, oh, this deck is broken, it's the best deck in format. The next day I said, oh, this deck's broken. Like, there's just so much broken stuff going on. Some of it beats the like bigger fishes eating the smaller fishes, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's been quite a format for improving your own opinion and base of thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I saw someone even describing, someone sent me an idea earlier about looking at especially with the new ruling on Last Secret Sword, with Wounded Black Dragon and Shakti, where like if you set it up right, if you have Shakti and Wounded Black Dragon on field, there's a way that you can just deal 4,000 damage to your opponent in one turn. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like, I didn't think about that. Like,
it's
that's
not even hard. I mean, like
it's not hard. It's not really. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a setup. Like, if they have Wounded Black Dragon and Shakti and a single copy of Last Sword Engraved, it's like, oh, cool. You're gonna take $4,000 this turn if you can't answer it. Like,
and what's hilarious is like that sounds like some combo setup. Like, no, those are all just cards you wanted to play anyway.
Right.
It's like
exactly.
Melgus will just sometimes kill you without that, and then has this backup to just randomly deal 4,000 damage. Like, Melgus is pretty brutal.
And I've actually heard like the setup for this combo is you go like you energize the Wounded Black Dragon and then you play Shakti on 2 and use OTK. But if you energize Wounded Black Dragon and then your opponent plays Sandstorm, so just to like kind of throw that out there.
There it is. There it
is. You're gonna
is.
play the Sandstorm before you play the Shakti? Is that what you're saying?
No, but I mean like
you're gonna play the Black Dragon before you play the Shakti?
So I go first. I don't know, man. If maybe you top deck the Shakti. I don't know.
What's so funny about this combo is like Kaguya doesn't even stop it, because like Shakti is an automatic trigger, so you'll get the 2 spells and then like you can't Kaguya both of them.
Yeah. Well, if you Kaguya the Shakti, that's
well,
pretty good, right?
If you Kaguya, so like that's different. If you Kaguya the original spell, like when they cast Last Sacred Sword, and you Kaguya the Last Sacred Sword, then Shakti has nothing to copy. So you'll actually wipe it out.
Does Shakti an automatic ability that copies a spell? It doesn't just.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it's the same reason why you could. It's the same reason why you could like copy like cancel Welser. Like you could like cancel Welser's copy, and then you didn't.
Oh, sure.
We have a question from CCG Prime, our sponsor for tonight, asking, "What is the panel's opinion on Reflect?" I have done zero testing or zero playing at all. So
I played 2 or 3 games of Reflect, not too much. I think it's atrocious. I can't imagine any way to play it other than either the aggro deck or the combo deck that like loops potential and convergence. Both of those decks seem terrible.
I've been thinking about kind of mini versions of it that I think could potentially be good eventually, but it would probably take a lot. It's like Mill Cell into energizing out Clockwork Girl into Deus Ex Machina, removing the counter from Mill Cell and removing the 4, getting a 10 counter Machina, and having a 10/10. So it's like a 2-mana.
Yeah, like you just played 3 cards to cheat a 10/10. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, well, it's cheating a 20/20, but whatever.
And also, Reflect can just has a 2-mana 10/10 flying swiftness. Like
Yeah.
you can just do that.
And also a 10/10 flying quick cast. Like that card's pretty solid on paper.
Yeah. No, like it's Reflect like is in this really funny spot where like it's got ridiculously big minions for very, very cheap, but that's just kind of not the format. Like it's not the format for it. Like, it would have been good back in the day, but it really isn't right. I mean, like as we were talking about with Melgus, like Reflect's got a 2-mana 10/10 flying swiftness, but Melgus just kind of has 4,000 damage on turn 2 sometimes. Like,
see the real play.
You need to be Melgus to do that though, or can you just do that in Reflect?
It's just easier to do it in Melgus.
Melgus gets 8 black redstones. Reflect only gets 4.
Right. No.
See, the real play with Reflect is to turn 1, play. What was the card I was thinking?
Okay,
of?
we're gonna quiet down on Mike's story time on a weird way to do a thing.
Shutting Mike down like that, Mike. I want to hear your story.
I'm just kidding, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
I actually want to hear it. I'm just messing with you.
Perfect. Okay, so turn 1, you play Mill Cell. It's whatever.
Oh, God. Every card you name, you're gonna have to tell me what it does because I know you're
literally Mistal's a 1-mana 10/10 that says nothing, like no other text. Just pretend.
Your major costs 1 less. That's the important part. Let's go. Okay, next.
Sure.
So you pass to your opponent. Your opponent doesn't kill Mill Cell because obviously they're not scared of it. Perfect. That's all you need to know. The next turn, you play Change the Heart, produce red or blue. I forget which one. Doesn't matter. Either one works. You tap it. You play Heroic Epic, Scheherazad's Heroic Epic. You bring out the 4,000 thing. You have 1 left over. You pitch the thing you dive the thing that gives something swiftness, and you swing 4,000. Easy game, easy life.
Is that Wanderer? Is that the
no,
Heroic?
No, that's New Frontiers legal.
It's the new.
What's the new Heroic Epic? Oh, Scheherazad. Okay.
The random.
But you don't actually even need my spell for this. Oh no, yes you do.
Yes, you need to read this out because it costs 1 less. So,
my opinion of Reflect is that it just does not do I'm looking. This is an opinion that might change because I have only read the cards and have not actually played a single game of Reflect. But it looks like you've got some big stat minions, but like we've seen Prissy kind of be the big stat minion deck, and then Prissy also has like that burn over the top that looks better than Reflect's burn potential in the long game. Like SBBR is just like a good card, and Reflect's burn stuff is medium at best. So
I think because the undercost. I think because of the problem with Reflect is I think right now with the format being what it is, you're gonna see splash green everywhere. At least if you're playing against Arla and Refrain or Arla and Rezard. And there are cards that those decks are going to be sideboarding for the threats that they're worried about that just are coincidentally also going to be good against Reflect Refrain. Particularly because, like you said, they're big minions that are undercosted, but like we have a lot of things that deal with undercosted stuff right now, especially units. Being that it beat Kaguya, we also got Earthly Flash, which is a 2-cost sword art that immediately cancels a Resonator of 3 or less.
Earthly Flash can't counter Reflect's 2 drops though, so
because they're 4 drops.
because they're secretly
that's true. That's true.
But like, you also can't counter anything from Prisia because they're all cheated out. But whatever.
Yeah, but like I think the things that were the thing is I think Reflect. Someone said in the chat that Reflect is fun but clunky, and I think that's probably the way that I would describe Reflect is when you're like looking at the cards, like when you're looking at it, like the synergies between cards, it's like they need each other to go off. Which I think if you look at Arla and Rizard, in this set, I think if you look at Arla and Rizard, there's a lot of like standalone power cards that like, when I play this card by itself, I'm going to do a lot. As opposed to like, and this again, this is my opinion because I also have just read the cards and never played it, but like looking at the way it kind of revolves around each other, like it does feel a lot of like, when Arla plays a card, that card is naturally by itself just generating the value I need from it. Whereas Reflect gets the most value when you start doing 2, 3, 4 card like synergies.
So here's another
real quick. Fun but clunky is a phrase that I've used to describe decks that are fun but clunky by Brandon. Okay. So fun but clunky has been used to either describe a deck that is fun but clunky, or I've used it to describe a deck that was secretly insane, but I had not yet optimized it yet. So it's possible that Reflect is fun but clunky, or as we really, some poor bastard somewhere like really digs into Reflect Refrain and like finds like the correct 40 cards that are best for the deck, it could actually be insane. I'm not sure. I have not played the deck at all. I would need to really get in there and say like, okay, I like this card a lot, but it's just not doing it for me, and this is supposed to be the power card, whatever. But yeah, it's one.
It does a good job of making it self-challenging, and it's kind of got like a lot of directions that it's pretty good in. Like as we've already said, it's got a 2-mana 10/10 flying swiftness, which like
is neat.
Sounds pretty good. It's got a 2-mana some like 8-something first strike swiftness. It's pretty good.
I'm pretty sure it's also got a 1-mana 6/6 swiftness. Like that's
it's and then like it's Regalia Burns and like it's got a lot of randomly good stuff like for aggro. But on the other side of it, it's also got a 1-mana draw 3 put back 2, and it's also got this like random infinite combo that it does like pretty easily. So it's kind of got like all these little pieces that are like kind of okay, but none of them are like the best. It's like not the best aggro ruler. It's not the best control ruler. It's not even the best combo ruler. And so it's like I kind of like put these together in a hodgepodge and hope you get there. I don't know. If the deck is good, I haven't found it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. It's just me and you, Mike. That's all right. This is the Brandon and Mike hour. What do you want to talk about, Mike?
Perfect hour. Honestly, it's time to discuss our guilty pleasure rulers or guilty pleasure cards of the set. What do you want to be
cards of the set?
Yeah, what do you want to be good that you know probably won't be?
Oh, Turbo Faria J Ruler beats.
There we go. That's what we were talking about.
Bad. It's such an awkward deck because I want to talk about it because I'm like, you guys, this deck is probably better than you think it is, but like it's still not actually good. So like you have to have that nuance to talk about it. But like, if I was Jeremy and had a YouTube channel where I could just play decks, I'd play Faria J Ruler beats.
Yeah, there we go. I'm building that deck. Like I think that deck's gonna like one of the things that I've talked about is. There are people on the competitive side, right? And I think that, Brandon, you and I have had this conversation with what we're seeing right now, with what's come out of AO3 and some of the cards that exist in New Valhalla Cluster and like the way they're interacting with what we got in AO3. There's like this weird, it's like really weird, where we have this gated piece where some of the cards that have come out are truly creating, like you said, that power spike, right? But if some of those gated cards or some of those gated interactions did happen to get removed from the format for some reason, with what we got in AO3, with the general support of how AO3 has supported a lot of good support for like other Alice Origins rulers, and like some of the other stuff we have for New Valhalla, this format actually is ridiculously complex and like fun and like everything else. And I think that's really cool. And I think that, I mean, even kind of naturally speaks to what we're talking about here of like, have opinions, try stuff out, see what you think, and put it out to the community because...
No, I have no opinions.
This is okay. This is the time to like really be truly looking at stuff because there might be something that we're just not seeing. And also, it's just all pretty dang fun to play with. You know, like there have been rulers in the past that have been successful that players are like, yeah, I don't want to play this. I don't want to look into it. I don't want to test it because it's just boring. Like
sounds like Tree.
Like yeah, exactly. Like Dark Tree, as I never got into playing Dark Tree, even back when I was playing competitively, even though it was good, because like I just boring. Like the deck itself was just boring to play. In looking at the cards and looking at the things that people are talking about with AO3, I have not heard of a deck that when someone describes it to me doesn't sound fun. Like everything that everyone describes to me so far is like, oh yeah, I think I'd have fun playing that.
You'd have fun playing Melgus, you think?
Based on how it's built, yeah. I don't play burn stuff. I'm not good at burn stuff. I will attest that every single time I have a burn deck for the channel, I specifically try to find someone else to play it because
I completely agree. I've been having so much more fun testing this format than I have in most other formats. Like there are a lot of really, really deep decks, which I think are pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome.
If it's red, I'm better off dead.
If it's red, you're better off dead. Is that what you said?
Because fuck aggro. But anyway. Sorry, Kyron, you're watching.
Especially now that Bear doesn't work anymore. Like that's pretty cool. That opened up the format a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's two kind of like pillars of gatekeeping right now in the format. One is the Bear ruling with Sigurd Beast of Artemis, and that got confirmed. The other is Sigurd plus Altar. And so I think if for some reason, although the new we don't have any ideas, and I'm not necessarily advocating for it, particularly because we have a month and kind of the things that Brandon talked about, like there is a lot of experimentation and like learning it. So like I'm not saying that it like if it doesn't happen, then it's like the end of the format. But like Sigurd Altar, if Altar got banned for any reason or there was a change to it or whatever, like this format suddenly explodes. Like there's so many different things that you could look into and everything else, and so it'll be interesting to see what people come up with in the next month. And kind of like Ryan said, when you said that there is anything with a month of looking at it, anything could happen for Collinsville, including Collinsville not happening, but like that's the thing that could happen.
Oh, that would be. I would be so devastated if Collinsville didn't happen.
I think it does, but we'll see. I think it does happen, but we'll see.
The only thing is like it's safe enough, but also that remains to be seen. Yada yada yada. Apparently, New York's supposed to be opening up starting Wednesday, but who knows if that's going to happen? I certainly don't because they've been saying it's been supposed to be opening up since like last month. But oh well.
I just want my Gil Lapis cosplay to be done in time, especially now that we've confirmed. Especially now that we've confirmed that Gil Lapis is a ruler in next set, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
So that is anything else that anyone wants to say? I'm looking in the chat to see if we have any other questions. Someone's pumped that Necrolance is back, especially since the now ruling is that Necromancy does work the way it initially worked before.
Oh boy, sure hope you enjoy not having a free.
I would have been so shocked if like they changed Necromancy for some reason. Like,
wait, did I miss something about them potentially changing Necromancy?
Well, it's because technically the wording of Necromancy, like because of the way it's worded and because the fact that it's not an addition resonator, it like follows the rules of an addition where it stays on field, kind of like the old bestow stuff did, where like it doesn't follow the resonator it's attached to grave. It's just an addition that you bestowed or attached to it. But like the ruling was made that like no, it's like actually an addition resonator. It's attached to that card. If it dies, the card dies with it.
I haven't even seen like the new like wording on Necromancy.
It's really wonky. Just know that it works exactly like it used to.
Okay. Sure.
So yeah, that I think I'm looking at the chat to see if there's anything else that we have. Any other questions? Do you guys have any other points for tonight?
We got a new dragon in this set. How do we break Fushi?
Stop it!
Hurry! Somebody help! Quick!
That's a good time to stop.
4-drop dragon. We got 2-drop dragons.
Yeah, and you think that's gonna stop me?
Mike?
No, we got 2 4-drop dragons. Come on, we got 2 4-drop dragons
that are both secretly 2-drops.
Correct.
Well,
And
then
with
that, I'm going to go ahead and call us here for tonight. Again, thank you all so much for joining in. It has been awesome to have you here, as well as being in the new setup, as well as wanted to thank our sponsor, again, ccgprime.com. You can check him out for all your Alice Origins 3 singles and moving on below. Also, be sure to check him out on Facebook. He is doing cool giveaways of like extra Ghost in the Shell stuff, extra Alice Origin stuff, and so you can check that out at ccgprime.com. Happy to have them sponsoring us for tonight. As always, if you want to support the channel directly, the easiest way to do that is to click that join button down below to financially support us, gets you access to being as part of the chat, all kinds of cool memberships and everything else. We're really excited. Anytime that happens, it is the best way that you can support what we do. It helped us to purchase a lot of the stuff that we have for the new setup here in my new house. That all came because of the thanks of members. So if you like what we're doing, want to support us, that's the easiest way to do it. But until next time, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, maybe even starting to have live feature, like actual gameplay feature matches next week. Don't hold me to it, but we're trying for it. Finally get back into it starting next week. But as always, this has been myself, DMO73, and I have been joined by Brandon Bremont, Ryan Miles, and Mike Rance.
Play Conqueror format. Yay!
Until next time, class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.